Okay, I will now call this meeting to order at 5 o'clock. Land acknowledgement, I am turning over to the Deputy Clerk to read this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi Nation who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We may also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. For my personal reflection, I thought I would briefly reflect on item 12.1.9 on tonight's agenda, being the establishment of the Grey Bruce Detachment Joint Board. As noted at the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 10th, and in accordance with the Community Safety and Policing Act, the new board structure includes a representative of Saugeen First Nation and a representative of the former Chippewas of Nawash. The establishment of the joint board replaces the single municipal boards and First Nation boards and further includes the opportunity for collaboration efforts across the detachment area. While recognizing there are numerous administrative steps that are yet to be determined regarding the joint board, the establishment provides an opportunity to reflect on our role towards truth and reconciliation. As a member of the Clerk's Department who works closely with Council, Committee, and Board processes, it is necessary that my decisions and actions continuously reflect that of an open and transparent environment. I hope to continue my understanding of truth and reconciliation by continuously being a member of staff that is willing to actively listen to others and continuously accept feedback to best support the Township of Georgian Bluffs and surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent. Moving on with the agenda, are there any additions to the agenda? Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Carlton. I'd like to put on for new business an invitation from the Keppel Sarawak Elementary School on a fundraiser initiative that they have going on at the school, looking for some talented people to read to some kids here on 1st of February.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Anyone else have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing nothing, the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as amended then. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Shouldice and Deputy Mayor Pringle, is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to be declared? Seeing none, you may declare at any time throughout the meeting if one should arise. The minutes of our previous meetings, the recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on December 13th, 2023 be adopted. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn, Councillor Day. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Announcements. Does any member wish to make an announcement? Councillor Shouldice.
This is going to be very spontaneous. I didn't plan on this, but I just want to say over the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 days, we've had quite a crazy amount of snow. So I just want to put a little shout out to the snowplow drivers we have at our township, and they're doing a great job. So thanks to those guys in particular, and everybody at staff at the township.
Thank you. And I think I could add kudos to Waste Management because I heard some interesting stories about how they were making sure garbage got picked up the other day. So good for them as well. Okay, delegations. For items on the agenda, any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. To register, go to www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729 extension 603. We do not have a delegation for items not on the agenda, but we do have one for items not on the agenda. And I will invite Mr. Paul Cash to speak. Welcome, Paul. You have 10 minutes to provide your comments, please. Paul, you are still muted, so we cannot hear you.
How's that?
That's good.
Good. Okay,
Perfect.
sorry. During the past 5-6 years, I have attempted to have someone in road maintenance operations to help look at this issue of water running from the roadside ditch and crossover drainage pipe from the other side, usually during spring runoff. At one point, I was connected with Dan, who became my contact on this, and we had talks about it. One winter, they came out and tried digging up snow and ice from the ditch, as well as deeper, and that ended up causing a little problems here and there, killing the bell lines and etc. And the helpers that were out there, as I watched them, didn't seem at that point, in my opinion, that they knew what they were supposed to do. But anyhow, it happened. I tried to keep in touch via emails, phone calls, never hearing any updates or actions. When I did get a hold of Dan, he would end up saying that they can't do anything this year because crews were busy doing other things. This repeated each year after that, with great patience, I must add. After trying to contact Dan again, someone finally said he wasn't there anymore. Again, a little frustration. Then I was referred to Tim Lewis. After bringing him up to date again, he told me to file a complaint. So there were never any follow-ups on dealings with this issue when this started over 5 years ago. Luke Ryan was involved as well, noting that my complaint had been received and that he or Tim Lewis would get back to me. And I do have a last case number, which I can give to you if you want to say it over the air or not. December 13th, but there was no response. Kaylee Harkins was involved for a while with emails saying that they would monitor the situation and get back to me in the spring. And that was back in February of 23. I pushed Tim to have him come out and take a look at things. Had a brief chat when he was there. I emailed him a video footage showing how the water was flowing from the other side of the road to my side and flowing directly onto my property. He would discuss it with operations, what could be done. Whoever has my USB, they could play that video clip, which basically shows how the water did end up going onto my property. Yep.
Okay, we have the video up to be shown now, Paul.
Yep, just run it. Yep.
Okay. So as you can see, there's a drain here that runs across the roadway here on the other side. And it's pouring out water here. And then directly, as you can see, it's pouring onto our property. See that? So there.
There's a few still pictures there as well, which if you wish to bring them up one at a time, just to give you an idea of how much water was building up, even going on to my neighbor's property down the side. Next one. Just another closer shot of things. Next picture. And that's just another still shot showing how the water is going right over the ditch onto my property. Anyhow, I then sent an email to Tim on the November 23rd asking a number of questions, one being if I should take this to council. Thusly, no response again. So thusly, here I am. In short, as to how I should phrase this, I would like to get this issue dealt with once and for all. I do not want this water flowing over my property, onto my property, as it's also come very close to my septic tanks a few times. The ditch needs to be laser lined so the water goes in one direction and not two, because right now it goes both ways and collects in the middle of my property. The ditch needs to be, yes, I said that. Secondly, the drainage pipe going across the road somehow needs to be redirected, because that is the main problem, if anything, with spring runoff, is that it just shoots it right over my ditch when it's full onto my property. So, as I also told this, I am also told that this water should be going into a sinkhole of sorts on George Suter's property beside me. Apparently he had issues there too. Anyhow, that's in short what I'm bringing to you. I feel I've been patient over these years and just never seem to get any direction in this. So again, I thank you for your time. If you have questions, I'll answer them.
Okay, thank you for your presentation and your pictures. That's very helpful. I'm not clear as council just what we can do here, so I'm going to turn to our acting CAO and see if he can give us some options as to what can be done to look after this.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Cash, and through you, Mayor Carlton. Thank you for your delegation. So I have had an opportunity to look back at this one, and I think apologies are due in the first instance. It does look like this one has been handed from staff member to staff member over a number of years. There is quite a history of correspondence we have from you. And there's obviously emails backwards and forwards, as you said. It does look like staff have turned up and looked at the issue a number of times, and as you indicate, may have tried to find a solution at some point in the past. But obviously, given the pictures you show and the video that you shared this evening, we haven't actually found a solution which has worked at this point and created a fix for you. So I have spoken to our new manager of operations. I think he and his team would have swung by this week. Not able to see anything this week, of course, because the weather is certainly less than ideal. But we will be back on site this spring. We will be in touch before we come back out this spring to have a look and see what is happening. It's one of those things where if we can do something as soon as we can, we will do so. But ditching is something that tends to sit until we get into the summer season. And I know that you've heard this before because I've seen it in some of the emails that you have received in the past. But we will get onto it this year. And I know you've heard it in the past, but I'll say it again. Thank you for the presentation. As I have spoken with our operations manager, it is on the list, and we will get to having a look this year to see what can be done and try and identify where the water is. The culvert in question under the road has been there. We've been able to track it back. It's been there since the earliest we can definitely find evidence of it is 2010, 2009. It does look like it's been replaced at some point in time. There are images of a pothole which is no longer in place. So I am assuming that there was a steel culvert, a metal culvert at some point, which has been replaced with the black plastic one that you can see now. But it is in the same location as the culvert that was there previously. So at this point, it's something to do with the ditch. Something has either changed with where the water was flowing in that ditch, or the ditch itself has gained a lower capacity. Either which way, we will be out and we will look to see what we can do in the spring.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we leave it at that right now, Mr. Cash, that you will hear from Mr. Lobley or deal with him on this issue, and hopefully we can get resolution for you?
Is that Mr. Lovely, you said?
Yeah, Mr. Lobley.
I will email you my contacts right now so that you have my contacts.
Oh, okay. Did you want a copy of what I made up here or not?
So through you, Mayor Carlton, I've been able to review the materials you submitted to the clerks, and so it's been part of the background work I've been able to dig through. So I think I've got everything I need for now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on with the consent agenda then. Are there any items anyone on council wishes to pull from the consent agenda? Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. I wonder if we might pull item 9.1.3, please.
Okay. Does anyone else have an item they would like to pull? Deputy Mayor Pringle. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, then the recommendation is that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopt the consent agenda for information as circulated, less items 9.1.3 and 9.3.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters and Councillor Day. If there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. So I will turn to you, Councillor Coburn, for 9.1.3.
Thank you. I just wonder if council might want to consider with me supporting AMO's ask, recommendation to send a resolution to the provincial government to proceed with a social and economic prosperity review. This is in light of the difficulties with the provincial municipal funding formula and those arrangements that often leave municipalities on the hook for far more than we can often reasonably afford. And we've certainly seen this locally in our struggle to put enough money aside for aging infrastructure and to have a healthy and feasible asset management strategy. I know this has been a source of some frustration in the past, and AMO is asking for us to step up and add to their voice. And so I would just like us to take a look at the draft resolution if there's support for that. And I would be happy to move that we adopt that resolution that appears before us in draft form.
Thank you, and I'll go to Councillor Day next.
Great, thank you. That's the one I would have pulled from the consent agenda for discussion tonight as well. That line where there's been no inflation adjustments to most municipal grants, such as the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, really caught my eye when I was reading through the documentation. And AMO has made it very easy for us with some wording, therefore be it resolved that the province of Ontario commit to undertaking with the Association of Municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. So it wouldn't be too much work, but it would add a voice to concern that affects the province and definitely Georgian Bluffs as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Day, are you willing to second that motion then?
I am willing to second that motion.
Thank you. And thank you to both of you, because that was one I had marked down to pull from the agenda as well. Are there any other comments from anyone else on council? We can read the motion. I have it up here somewhere. Do we need to read that draft resolution, or we're giving direction to bring this back to another meeting to have that resolution passed? I'm looking to our clerk and deputy clerk in this case.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton, through you. If it seems as if that draft resolution has been supported in principle, I would suggest that you can pass that resolution tonight if you're comfortable with the resolution as it stands. Alternatively, direction to staff to craft the motion and personalize it to Georgian Bluffs could be brought back at a future meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Councillor Coburn and Councillor Day. Do you want that personalized for Georgian Bluffs and brought back at a future meeting, or do you want to pass that draft resolution tonight? Councillor Coburn?
Yeah, sorry, I'm happy to pass it as it appears before us tonight. It'll be personalized enough, I imagine, when we put it on our letterhead. I believe that would be in keeping with past practice. I don't think it needs any more personalization than that. I'm happy with it as is.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Day, are you as well?
I am happy. I just took a minute to reread it, and as Councillor Culper said, once it's on our letterhead, I don't believe it's worth the energy to reword the way it's raised right now. I think it sounds representative of our needs.
Okay, so I will go ahead and read that just so that we have it on record that way for the public. So the resolution is that whereas current provincial and municipal fiscal arrangements are undermining Ontario's economic prosperity and quality of life, whereas nearly a third of municipal spending in Ontario is for services in areas of provincial responsibility and expenditures are outpacing provincial contributions by nearly $4 billion a year. Whereas municipal revenues such as property taxes do not grow with the economy or inflation, whereas unprecedented population and housing growth will require significant investments in municipal infrastructure, whereas municipalities are being asked to take on complex health and social challenges like homelessness, supporting asylum seekers, and addressing the mental health and addictions crisis, whereas inflation, rising interest rates, and provincial policy decisions are sharply constraining municipal fiscal capacity, whereas property taxpayers, including people on fixed incomes and small businesses, can't afford to subsidize income redistribution programs for those most in need, whereas the province can and should invest more in the prosperity of communities, whereas municipalities and the provincial government have a strong history of collaboration. Therefore, be it resolved that the Province of Ontario commit to undertaking with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario a comprehensive social and economic prosperity review to promote the stability and sustainability of municipal finances across Ontario. So we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And moving on, the next item is 9.3.3. I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor.
Just a bit of things there. Just curious, was there anything in this email on the support for Tate Township that would be a benefit to Torture Bluffs, or is it kind of be in good enough shape that we don't need to? I thought if there was support there, it was something that was valuable to you or to staff, I would move it forward. If not, I just let it go. It's just a point of question.
So, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. Through you to the Deputy Mayor. Yes, of course, there's always a benefit to staff getting free training from, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. We do take training on a yearly basis now. We do pay for it. It's about $500 a year, nothing substantial, but there is a requirement for training for individuals such as myself and the deputy clerk who have cemetery sales licenses to take training. So, if there was a training program that was free and offered by the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, that would certainly be beneficial to us. One of the other things they touch on, and you may recall from budget discussions, is the ask for design of some universal cemetery software. And of course, that would certainly be a benefit to us in terms of our cemetery operations.
I'd like to put a motion on the floor to support this letter. Need a seconder, I guess.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor Pringle moves it and Councillor Winters has seconded that. Do we need to read that resolution that's in theirs, or because that one is specific to Tate Township?
Through you, Mayor Carlton, I think it would be okay for this one to be a resolution and direction to staff to forward a letter of support for Tate Township's resolution, as we have done with this type of correspondence in the past. That simplifies it a little bit.
Okay, so are you okay as Deputy Mayor with that resolution going forward? And will this then come back, or it will just, staff will look after? Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item then? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So moving on with correspondence, the first item 11.1 is Sherry Grant and Robert Brown on short-term accommodations. Does any member wish to comment on this one? Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
I think the one that jumps out in this letter for me, the concern expressed is around the sound meters. And I know we're going to be getting a bylaw back from staff that will be in draft form that we can alter or change as needed at the time. But I have heard from a couple of folks that they do have concerns about these sound meters. And I just wonder if we need to be sure that this is going to be something that will be effective in helping to reduce the noise bylaw complaints, but also if it's Wi-Fi based, how is that going to work in areas where connectivity isn't as adequate? And are the devices going to be cost prohibitive for people? So I just wanted to pull that one particular item out because it's something I don't have a lot of knowledge about, and I guess I have some lingering concerns about that particular requirement as well.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, to Councillor Coburn. So there are a number of noise meters that are on the marketplace, many of which are actually discounted when you sign up with VRBO, Airbnb, and other short-term accommodation providers. They're available in two different formats. There are subscription-based devices, which you basically get the device for free and you pay a subscription cost. Works out around about $100 a year for the basic noise subscription cost. And so the device there is free, and it's about $100 a year to run the device. There are other devices where you can spend more and buy the device, and the device is then standalone, doesn't require connectivity, and there's no subscription cost. It's just a device that sits in the house and monitors those peak noises. And in essence, what that does is it doesn't necessarily give the operator live data. What it does tell them is they can review that data on a periodic basis by plugging the device into a computer or so on of some sort. It basically can give them a feedback as to activity that was going on in the house in a period where they weren't there. Both the standalone devices and the subscription-based devices are actually designed to provide multiple functions. So they are smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, noise detectors, entry detectors, motion detectors. They provide a whole range of potential other added benefits to operators aside from the noise monitoring. As I understand, and through the research that we did in bringing forward the paper there in December, on short-term accommodations, these have proven to be quite effective in helping authorities when they're regulating short-term accommodations prove or disprove noise. Noise is one of those very regular complaints which is extremely difficult to prove or disprove after the fact because it is a perception-based thing. So what one person thinks is overtly noisy on one particular day may be not very noisy on the next day, and so on and so forth. And so what we have found with municipalities that have implemented these is it has helped them deal with and respond to noise complaints in a far more consistent manner than it being driven by just a complainant versus a property manager. When the party that was there may not be present any longer, and the property owner may not have been present. So the noise meters have definitely helped with implementing short-term accommodation bylaws where noise is part of those things, which is exactly why we've placed this requirement into the recommendations that we made in December. However, the recommendations that were made and supported in December are far from final. There will will be a bylaw that comes forward, and we can remove the requirement for sound monitoring devices, or we can make the requirement for sound monitoring device only applicable to certain short-term accommodations as opposed to others, as council sees fit, and certainly we'll be building that forward and bringing that forward in the spring this year. So there's lots of opportunity to change this. It's by no means set in stone at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate that extra explanation, and that certainly helps me to be in support of the sound monitor as well. So I'm glad to hear that it is effective in other municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you. And a further suggestion, perhaps all of this information could be available as part of that whole report coming back, so that it can be shared with anyone that is going to be affected by it.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, absolutely. And if anyone is interested in if there are any operators that are listening to this now or listening to it later on when they watch this meeting back over coming days, I believe Airbnb provide, I think they have an agreement with 3 different providers of noise monitoring devices. And so there's lots of information on their website. But actually, if you did a quick Google search for noise monitoring devices, there's a couple which come up right at the top of the page, and they're sponsored. They're the 2 really popular ones. But there are a whole bunch of these, and you've got 2 or 3 pages of Google hits that you can go through and see a variety of different options, a variety of different ways of buying into them, and a variety of different added extras that they might provide. And indeed, we believe it's quite likely that many short-term accommodation operators actually already have these installed, because, as I say, they provide a range of other benefits to operators in terms of remote sensing, identifying how many people are in a property, and so on and so forth. So these are designed, there are a whole range of them that have been designed specifically to cater to the short-term accommodation market and help with owners who are not necessarily present in a property during the time it's being used as a short-term accommodation. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And if there's no further comments, then we will simply receive that letter for information. The next item, 11.2, Shauna McIver, commenting about the reducing low carbon emissions and adapting to a more volatile climate. Does anyone wish to speak to this letter? Seeing no one, again, we will receive this one for information. Cholet Stone, a request for support. Does any member of council wish to comment on this one? Councillor Day, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. I saw the request as well as the letter that you have drafted, and I don't want to add any red tape, but I do want to understand what we would be approving a little bit more. They offered to come in and do a presentation, and I feel like that could be due diligence on our part, and it also might help Cholet Stone by increasing community awareness of their project. I think anytime there's major development, it sounds major from the brief description in the letter. Neighbors and people in the community benefit from knowing what's going on. Thanks.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, good evening, Councillor Day. I don't believe the letter is actually committing us to anything at this point in time. I think the Cholet Stone are simply seeking support at this point for a potential future expansion, which, as I read the letter, is perhaps in part, or if not fully, reliant on a successful funding application to the Ontario Development Fund, Southwestern Ontario Development Fund. So I don't think we're approving anything, and certainly if there is development that is required as a result of the success, hopefully, in securing that funding, that would be something which would come back to council, would be my understanding, as a development application. So I think there will be opportunity to see this if it's looking at growth in terms of physical growth. I think this is simply looking for support to apply to the development fund at this point in time, but I don't see any harm at all in asking for a presentation to council to talk a little bit about what they hope to achieve in terms of this. I might suggest, because there is nothing that I'm aware of in terms of the deadline. I don't think they mentioned in their email or this letter a deadline for funding. If it was okay with Councillor Day, that perhaps we disconnect the letter, if there's support broadly for the letter, disconnect the letter with a possible future presentation, just in case there is a funding deadline. Wouldn't want to hold the letter up on the basis of us arranging a presentation at some point in the future. If you were happy for that, but yeah, I think the letter is simply asking for support in regards to a funding application.
Thank you. And I will add that the application submission deadline is January 24th, which is why we moved this ahead, because I got it after the agenda had been sent out. So all they're asking us for at this point is to support them, or provide a letter of support for them applying for funding. And then after that point, they will be putting everything together. As far as our acting CAO has said, that if there's any changes to the building and that type of thing, that would have to come forward in the appropriate channels later. So what I have in front of me is an email, because I did ask them that question. It says, in terms of timing, the application submission deadline is January 24th, and they have a preliminary draft out with the SWODF Review Council currently. And apparently the application was quite lengthy in preparing and was only released just prior to the holidays. So that's why it was kind of a short intake window for them, and hence why they're fairly short with the timing on asking us for support. I did also ask to have that letter changed, because it was reading as being the mayor supporting it, and I feel that if council is going to support it, it should read that way, that it's coming from all of us. So if there's any further questions, I'll try and answer them. Councillor Coburn.
So it sounds like this isn't just correspondence. It sounds like you're wanting to move, Mayor Carleton, that we support you sending this letter on behalf of council. Is that what we're discussing right now? Is that the motion?
Yes, that we're sending this letter on behalf of all of council supporting Shoallice Stone's application for funding. Councillor Day, did you have something to add?
Yes, thank you for asking. I was just rereading the last sentence of the letter from council, where it says, "I wholeheartedly support this project taking place in Shallow Lake." Applying for support. So I would like to read the sentence again, but it does make me wonder, if we support the application, is it too early to put blanket support behind the project? I'm not anti the project. I just want to understand the project before I wholeheartedly support the project.
So through you, Mayor Carleton, I believe, and perhaps the reason this is on correspondence is because the letter was not authored by us or Mayor Carleton. The letter was authored by Shoallice in the hope that we could sign it. I believe if they'd rather have a letter than no letter, and so I think we can probably take some creative license with the letter, and we could change the final sentence. I think, for example, we could make it, "We support this project moving forward to the funding application stage," if that would perhaps satisfy you, and make sure that our support is at this time only for the funding application, and we look forward to finding out more about the project in due course.
I feel much more comfortable with that. Thank you.
Councillor Coburn?
I think maybe we're mincing words a little bit here. I think if we're going to say on behalf of council that we support application for funding, then in fact we're supporting the project. Because and again, I'm not anti the project at all. I just don't know what it is that exactly that we're supporting. So I think if we're supporting a grant application, it's probably logical to assume that we're supporting the project itself.
Okay, so if we go ahead and send the letter in support of their grant application and at the same time ask them to come and do a presentation to us at council outlining exactly what this is, because they're not going to have an answer on that grant funding right away. So there's certainly time in between. The short term thing though is they need the letter of support for the funding application fairly quickly because the government, as normal, doesn't give everyone a lot of time to react on some of these things. So is council in favor of sending in this letter of support, or do you want a presentation from them first, or change that last paragraph of the letter? Councillor Winters?
I would support sending the letter. I mean, when I read the paragraph stating that it's a $4 to $6 million capital investment over 3 years, integrating advanced first North America equipment, expanding capacity to enter new markets, growing production, automating currently manual positions. We all know that there's an issue with labor force out there. And then when it's a 54% increase in energy efficiency and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, I think this is a showcase for our municipalities saying we support this business, trying to be proactive, trying to be environmentally friendly, automate, and be a leader in the industry. I think it's pretty clear what we're supporting here. It doesn't say that they're expanding their building. It doesn't say that they're adding. They're automating and they're using industry first equipment. I support this 100%.
Thank you. And I do agree with that. Deputy Mayor Pringle?
Yeah, 100% behind Councillor Winters there too. These guys are doing everything they want as far as climate. Reducing greenhouse emissions. They're trying to do the best they can for the area around it. We all know they make stone out there. So what their initiatives are to make that happen, that's really what they do. So I'm 100% behind supporting with the letter too, or the way it's worded.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing Councillor Coburn?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that I'm supportive of it as well. It just would have been nice to have maybe a little more information, just from an interest perspective. But I do understand the pressures of time and grant applications and deadlines. So yeah, I'm in favor of going ahead with this as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at Madam Clerk. Did you have a comment for me here? Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Winters, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. We are now on to committee reports. So the recommendation that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on January 10th, 2024 be adopted, including recommendations COW 2024-001 to COW 2024-010. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Scholdes, did I see Councillor Coburn? Is there any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And staff reports were corporate services, administrative amendment to purchasing bylaw. The recommendation is that purchasing policy bylaw 2019-047 be amended as described herein and that bylaw 2024-004 be approved. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and I see Brittany Drury on here. Are you speaking to this tonight, Brittany?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through your chair, just to briefly highlight the report that you see in front of you this evening, staff are respectfully requesting an administrative amendment to the existing purchasing policy, most specifically to permit electronic submissions both through the RFP and RFT process. Our current policy does not permit electronic submissions. Strictly submissions through paper is what we currently accept. And given, modernization of the world and modernization of purchasing processes throughout Ontario, we are requesting that this administrative amendment be processed at this time. You'll also note that in the report, we make mention that the entire policy does need to be reviewed and updated, and we are intending to do so throughout the remainder of this calendar year, being that of 2024. So should council be amendable, we have presented the attached bylaw to this report for enactment this evening, so we can advertise the RFPs and RFTs out of the 2024 budget cycle electronically. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from anyone on council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Bylaws. There are no zoning bylaws, other bylaws. The first item, 14.2.1, that bylaw 2024-004 being a bylaw to amend Township Purchasing Policy Bylaw 2019-047 and the appendices contained therein be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn, Councillor Winters. Is there any further discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? Is carried. Thank you. Next item is the borrowing bylaw. So the recommendation that bylaw 2024-005 being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the corporation of the Township of Georgian Bluffs be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Shouldice. Is there any discussion on this one? I'll just comment for any public that are watching. This is a standard bylaw that the township needs to pass each and every year in order to meet our legislative requirements. I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. The next one is the interim tax levy bylaw, which is the same as the last one that needs to be done every year. That bylaw 006. Are we missing a 2024-006? Okay, let me start again. That bylaw 2024-006 being a bylaw to provide for interim tax levies for the year 2024 for the Township of Georgian Bluffs be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn and Councillor Winters. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. We have no unfinished business, new business. We have the item about the Keppel School reading. And I have the information on that here somewhere. And this one came up late as well. Keppel Sarawak School is asking for volunteers to read during their fundraising for the library on February 1st from 12 to 1. Neither the deputy mayor or myself are available to go at that time, so I think the principal, Laurie Gilkinson, is looking for 2 people. Councillor Day.
It's exam days in the secondary world, so I would be happy to attend on behalf of the municipality.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and I think our acting CAO has volunteered to go as well.
I think I have now. Through you, Mayor Carlton. No, I'd be delighted to. But they do ask for celebrities, and I think councillor far more celebrity than the CAO, acting CAO. And so, so if there is another member of council who wants to take that second stop, I am not going to put up resistance.
Councillor Shoulders?
Can I just confirm what the time is for that again?
It's 12 to
12.
1 on February 1st.
I work a night shift on the 1st, but I'm happy to go. That sounds good. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we need a motion then that Councillor Day and Councillor Shoulders will be attending Capital Sarawak School February 1st at 12 o'clock. And if you know which book you want to read, we need to let Laurie Gilkinson know. Otherwise, the school will come up with a book for you to read. So can I have a mover and a seconder on that? Councillor Coburn? Deputy Mayor Pringle? There's no further discussion. I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much for doing that, because I did it last year and it was a blast. The kids are a riot. And I think you'll end up reading to 3 different classes. They'll keep you moving around. Notice of motion. Does any member wish to provide a notice of motion? Being none, there is no closed session. Confirming bylaw. That bylaw number 2024-007, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on January 17th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Shoulders. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Date of the next regular meeting is special budget on January 30th at 9 a.m. Committee of the Whole February 7th at 5 p.m. If there's no other business, I will now call for adjournment of this meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters and Councillor Coburn, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.
Safe drive home, everyone.